What if I told you there was a labyrinth of tunnels under your city built by one man hundreds of years ago, and no one knows what their purpose was or is?
I'd call you a liar.
Well, if you live in Liverpool, England, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Buckle up as we dig our way through the mystery of the Mad Mole of Edgehill. Hello and welcome to Remember, a podcast all about histories, mysteries, and did you know that people used to die from something called water on the chest?
Is that TB?
No. I'll say that learning about old causes of death, you kind of start to understand the board game Operation a bit better. Water on the chest is actually plural effusion. So that clears that up.
That's going to be my next guess. That was 100% my next guess.
Now let's all say hello to your favorite Charlie horse and mine, my co-host, Matthew Jude.
You're my co-host, Charles Horse.
My co-horse? And I'm Paula. These Operation jokes don't really have legs, but now I feel committed to the bit. Dimming. And this episode is about Joseph Williamson, also known as the King of Edgehill or the Mad Mole of Edgehill. And he died on May 1st, 1840, from water on the chest. Eh?
Okay, thank you. That's a resolution. That's good.
I made it all connect.
I'm going to be thinking about Hans Moleman from The Simpsons the entire time, by the way.
Why?
Because Moleman, that's his name.
Oh, Moleman.
Yeah.
I was still thinking about Operation. Water on the knee. Operation. Did y'all have that commercial for the game? That's like the jingle.
Our version of Operation was better than the American version of Operation because the person got to leave the hospital financially stable.
Oh, also water on the chest, in the simplest terms, is a buildup of fluid around the lungs.
So a bit like TB then, right? Isn't that what that is?
TB, you're like coughing up blood. I don't know. I don't think you cough up blood with...
What's blood made out of?
I mean, it's a fluid, but I don't think it's the same.
It's mostly water. I'm looking it up. Is blood mostly water? How to get rid of blood out of... No, that's the difference. Yeah, blood is plasma. Plasma's mostly water. Suck on that.
I'm not a vampire, so I won't. But Joseph Williamson's death is not the historical mystery of this episode. It's more about what he chose to do with his life. And that was build a network of labyrinthine tunnels under the city of Liverpool. And yes, I practiced saying the word labyrinthine before recording this episode.
Why did he do it? What's going on with him?
Oh my gosh, Matthew, I literally have in my script next, ask me why he built them, Matthew. But you did it. I didn't even have to tell you to do it.
It's not our first podcast. We've been doing this for a while. I know what I'm doing.
Ask me again, though. Ask me again so I can do the follow-up joke.
But why did he do it?
No one knows.
Thanks.
And that's why it's a mystery. So Matthew and I were recently in Liverpool, and I really wanted to tour these tunnels. Why do you laugh when I say that?
It just rained so hard whilst we were in Liverpool, and we were there for like 18 hours.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think we were even there for 24 hours. But I wanted to spend some of those 18 hours touring these tunnels so we could see them for ourselves. But of course, they were closed the day we were there. And many of you listening may never even get the chance to go to Liverpool, England. And even if you do, you might have the same luck we did and still not get the chance to see these tunnels for yourself. But you can rely on me, your history podcast friend, to get on the internet, do some research, and bring us all as close as humanly possible to actually getting to see these tunnels. See them with your ears, 'cause it's a podcast.
When we're talking tunnels, Paula, are we talking... There's a guy in China, right?
Okay.
There's always a guy in China.
There's
let's
a
be
lot
honest.
of guys in China. It's hugely populated country.
There's always some guy in China that did it, right? And I believe he built a tunnel through a mountain so it stopped people having to go all around this mountain. And everyone's like, well, he did it because he did it by himself. And everyone was like, oh, he did it because it would help him get to and from a place he needs to go. He did it on his own, the whole tunnel, like the whole way through. But as soon as he finished, he moved.
He was like, I started out making this for me, but by the time I was done, it took so long that I couldn't stand to look at it ever again. I gotta go.
Cannot look at this mountain ever again. And I tried to kill it, and it didn't work. That was my tunnel anecdote. Not got a lot of them, but I do know as well, around me where I live, there's a lot of World War II kind of tunnels where and I've done a tour of them.
Oh.
And it's where the people from the government and stuff would go to shelter from all-out war and stuff.
Only the special elite government people.
Only the elite. You can't save everyone, Paulie. You might as well just save the elite. Who's gonna lead? We need to save no one but leaders.
I mean, it's there in the word elite.
It almost is. That was almost a good point. Almost a good point.
Well, how about some more almost good points? There's not a lot known about Williamson's early life.
Great start.
Thank you. It's believed he was born in Warrington in 1769.
Warrington?
Yeah. How would you say it? Are we going to have another one of these moments?
I would just say Warrington, but maybe it's a place called Warrington. I don't know. It could be...
How are we saying it differently?
Warrington?
Warrington?
Let's agree to disagree on that one. Let's move on.
I don't know. I'm saying it wrong. Anyway, around the age of 11, he left home, which feels impossibly young to me. Like, I don't believe the fact is true. I just can't believe it's a true fact.
Home.
Like, he
moved
left
out.
his family at the age of 11.
Too young.
I was so, like, this can't be true, that I looked up the average life expectancy of this time. And it was only, like, 37. So if you're thinking about he was like a third of the way through his life, if you think about it like that.
It's like a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense for him to leave. But to my modern times, and he was still just 11. It's not like 11-year-olds were older then. They were still only 11.
It's like little Gavron. Little people know what little people know.
Those are the lyrics, Gavroche.
Gavroche. You know what I'm talking about, ladies.
I know what you're talking about. Exactly. Picture little Gavroche leaving home at the age of 11 and traveling a few miles along the River Mersey. I'm waiting for you to correct how I've said it.
You mean the River Yes?
Mersey to Liverpool.
That's a great joke. That is a good joke. That's a good joke.
Oh, boy. So he travels along the River Mersey to Liverpool to try and find work in the burgeoning port town. What he found...
11.
At 11.
What were you doing when you were 11?
What was I doing when I was 11? I mean, playing Pogs. Wishing I had a Tamagotchi.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't looking for work in a town 20 miles down the river from where my parents were.
My only work I was doing when I was 11 was going to karate twice a week and trying to level up my materia in Final Fantasy VII.
What Joseph Williamson found, the tender age of 11, was a job working for Richard Tate's tobacco and snuff firm.
That doesn't sound right.
This was like a...
That sounds wrong. That's bad.
That's how one of the ways Liverpool made its money. Tobacco. Do you ever say a thing and then you're like, why did I say that?
All the time. And I edited it out. It's a great power I have.
Good.
No consequences.
And over the years, Joseph rose through the ranks of the company, starting his own merchant company on the side. He's so successful that he eventually marries Elizabeth Tate and buys the tobacco and snuff company. So he just worms his way right into the family and takes over the company. And aren't you proud of me? That's the backstory.
How much tobacco was this guy consuming in his teens? You've got to assume a lot, right?
Oh, they all probably had like major throat cancer, right? Like just constantly surrounded by smoking or chewing or whatever, I would think.
Poor sod. But he went on to do great things. And we're about to find out what those are.
Or strange things. I guess it depends on how you define the word great. So this is kind of the golden age of business and growth for Liverpool as a commercial port. And Joseph Williamson is right in the middle of it. Also, actually, I want to put this in some historical context that helped me as an American. So he's born in 1769, we think. 11 years after that is 1780. This is just post-American Revolution times.
Yeah.
That helps me contextualize the time period we're in. Just think like Hamilton, kinda, but across the pond.
In the good place, the loyal place, the place that doesn't act up, keeps with the status quo, likes things how they are, pretty happy, fighting a war on multiple fronts.
A place that keeps calm and carries on.
Keep calm and carries on, no matter how bad it is here.
So Joseph and Elizabeth move to Mason Street in the largely undeveloped area of Edgehill. I paused in case you wanted to make your joke yet. Are you're gonna? Okay, cool. I'll just pause every time I say the word edge and see in case you want to do it.
Edging Hill, am I right? Gamers.
This area had previously been sandstone quarries, but Joseph wanted to develop Mason Street into housing. He was very entrepreneurial. So he starts building houses, and these dugout sections of quarry make great cellars, which were very fashionable to have at the time. But he also wants to put elaborate gardens in the back of all the houses, which is also fashionable for the time. But it's not really possible because the quarries mean that they're basically missing chunks of land. Behind the houses, the sandstone bedrock dropped down about 20 feet to Smithdown Lane below. So it's like 2 stories a drop. There's not much room for an actual yard back there.
Not one to go running in anyway.
No.
But enough space to put a slide, so that would be nice.
So he begins to build brick arches over these drop-offs behind the houses that gardens can then be put on top of. And these are essentially the first tunnels that he creates.
I can already see the founding steps of what can be something that gets entirely out of hand,
I realize there may be a bit of a through line in some of the topics I choose. As I was researching this, I thought a lot about Sarah Winchester.
Yeah, I've had the exact same feeling. It's got a very Winchester feel.
So there aren't any real official records or maps of Williamson's tunnels. He was very secretive about them and rarely let anyone other than his workers inside. We don't know why he started building them or what he intended them to be used for.
A civilization, possibly for the mole people themselves?
Maybe it was for the mole people. Forget the lizard people. We got to create tunnels for them to come up from under the earth, and then they...
I do need to say, though, I just love people who are a bit weird and eccentric in ways that are like this. I just think they're just great people. They just don't care what anyone else thinks or says or does, and they have a vision in their mind, and they have to just get it out. What's that movie where the guy's got the whole schematics for a spacecraft or something in his brain, and he has to get it out? There's a film. I don't know. And there's definitely a film. It might be, I'm thinking of Stargate. So it's Jack O'Neill has the ancient database downloaded into his brain. Look, that's not the point, but I like it when people have all this stuff in their brain, this thing they need to do, this inspiration, this world they need to create, and they just go, sod it, I'm doing it, and no one's going to stop me. Not reason, not logic, not love, not anything, not money.
He's just going to do it. Well, I like the idea that he woke up one day at the tender young age of 11 and went, I got to build some tunnels. Bye, Mom and Dad. Went to Liverpool, worked real hard for 20 years, made a bunch of money knowing that one day he was going to make these tunnels.
It's like why I think Fields of Dreams could be a good film. It's not a good film. It's actually
you reference Field of Dreams in I think every Remember episode.
I do not. It's a terrible film that makes no sense.
We've talked about it in at least one other episode.
I feel strongly about it. Then what happened?
Well, over time, the tunnels were forgotten about, or just seen as storage cellars or rubbish chutes for the people who lived and worked above them, who technically own them. The people who live above them are the ones who technically own them. So much rubbish, or trash, to translate for us Americans, were dumped into these tunnels that 2 different groups of volunteers have been working since the 1990s to dig them out and restore them to their former subterranean glory.
I bet there's some cool stuff they're finding in that trash.
They've actually found lots of really cool Victorian-era stuff down there, a lot of it in a really good condition. Because there was, like, ash dumped down there for some reason that I had a hard time understanding, but there was a reason that there was ash put down there from, like, a corporation or something, a factory that was like, we store our ash down here. And so that actually helped preserve a lot of these things.
I think the reason is out of sight, out of mind, Paula. I think that's the reason.
There's a lot of that. They're like, oh, there's just a big empty space below our factory or our house or our whatever, and they just dumped their shit down there.
You'd be amazed at how this happens. It happens all over the world. And I can understand why, because when you're around something all the time, you don't think of it as being such an amazing thing. But there's certain Egyptian sites that are just filled with trash.
Yeah.
And when Hollywood went to Egypt, I think there was a film about Cleopatra or something like that. They just dumped everything into this one temple. They just dumped all the trash in.
Yeah.
And in a way, it kind of preserves it from anyone going down there. But it's like, really? You're just going to kind of... It's not sacrilegious, but it feels... It's in the same family as being sacrilegious.
But it's disrespectful.
It's disrespectful.
Yeah. Well, some of the stuff that they found down there, one of the coolest things is a commemorative cup from the coronation of King Edward VII. So 2 kings before Elizabeth.
Yeah.
I didn't even remember that any royalty even existed before Elizabeth. You know what I mean?
History podcast, but yes.
She was queen for so long.
She was.
The rest of them don't even matter.
You'll stand, by the way, when you say her name. Don't. We're on camera and it's not going to work. Also, I don't care. I find it very interesting, but I'm certainly not a royalist.
Lots of intact glass bottles, stuff like that.
Yeah.
One of the things they found a lot of are cod bottles. Do you know what a cod bottle is?
It's where you keep your fish.
I had never heard of them before either, but they were invented in the UK in 1872.
Are they like brown bottles?
There were 4 carbonated drinks, and they have a marble in them. So sometimes they're called like marble bottles or cod neck bottles. So they have a marble and a rubber washer in the neck that would seal...
They're like soda streams.
Yeah, it would seal the bottle closed and hold in the carbonation for your carbonated drink, for your soda. To open it, you would push the marble down the neck into a special chamber that would then hold it. And that would open the bottle and you'd be able to pour the soda out.
That sounds... So was the pressure itself keeping the bottle closed?
That's what forced the marble into the rubber washer and sealed it.
That's what I mean. Yeah. That's cool.
They're really rare now, like super rare now, because kids would break the bottles to get the marbles out.
To get the marbles. Yeah, exactly. Of course you would.
So the fact that they have these that were just like stuck down in these cellars, they're these really rare things.
Kids still rip open Guinness cans to get the ping pong ball out.
There's a ping pong ball in a Guinness can?
There's like a little, it's not really a ping pong ball, but it's like a little ball that looks like a ping pong ball inside a can of Guinness. And there's a little bead as well inside of graffiti.
There is that,
bottles,
yes,
like
to help with shaking it, I guess, because you can hear it.
When we were in Liverpool, we went to the Liverpool Museum as well as the Tate, which we had a good time at the Tate, but we went to the Liverpool Museum and they showed you the layers of sediment, what was in the different layers underneath Liverpool. And there's a whole layer which is just broken pipes. I'm going to guess that layer is the layer that we're talking about right now as well. So I imagine down there in these tunnels, there's just loads and loads of old, like, broken clay pipes as well.
Garbage. And lots of human waste as well, which is gross, that people are now spending their time volunteering to, like, dig out, to clear out these tunnels.
What a privilege, though.
They're passionate. So one of the reasons the tunnels are still so mysterious is because they were filled up with so much garbage and ash and dirt. A lot of them ended up totally filled in or walled up, so it's hard to know exactly how many tunnels exist or even how deep they go.
I was going to ask, what are we dealing with here? What do we think? What are we... I'm doing this... If you're watching the video, you can see I'm doing a snake hand. What are we dealing with here, right?
So it seems like between 1806... and his death in 1840, Williamson had workers. Now, earlier I said one man built these tunnels. He didn't. He hired workers just to give them some credit.
It's like, it's like Winchester House, though. She built the house, but she paid other people.
She paid other people
hammer
to
a
do it.
nail in. Yeah, exactly.
So Williamson had workers build at least 15 tunnels within a 300-meter wide rectangle of land. That's like 984 feet, or just under 0.2 of a mile, to do some conversions.
That's not a lot of space.
It's not a ton of space.
It's quite intricate tunnels then for such a small area, really.
Well, and the tunnels are all kinds of sizes.
I
Some
suppose
are
they could be on top of each other as well, couldn't
And they are.
could all, yeah.
There's a triple-decker tunnel, basically, that has like 3
Jealous.
on them. So some are as small as 4 feet wide and 6 feet high, and some are huge. One tunnel, nicknamed the Banqueting Hall, is 64 feet long, 14 feet wide, and 27 feet high.
That's not really about size, though, is it?
So it's like a 2-story building in there.
It's like in Turkey, they find all these different places, and they keep on finding them. There's other places as well, but I know that there are some in Turkey, and there's entire civilizations worth of space dug into tunnels, and there's ventilation shafts and all this type of stuff, and there's so much to explore, and we know there has to be more of these out there. Just entire places, like Petra is a good example as well. They've just found recently that this Petra that you see, the front of Petra, they've just found out there's actually a bunch of sediment there, and if you dig down, there's like a whole extra story underneath what you can see. In fact, when the Romans got there, they were like, it was already full of sediment when the Romans got there.
Wow.
And they were like, let's just pave over this and just use the top. So it's like, they think there could be at least 2 or 3 stories underneath Petra. But in places like Turkey, there's these tunnels that have been built. Whole civilizations. It's like everyone could, if they needed to, I suppose, it could have been, we don't know why they're there, but you could have been used so that everyone who needed to could escape underground. You got there and people would get to raid your civilization and go, where the hell is everybody?
And then you have a Roanoke mystery. Where did this whole town go?
We know
and they're like,
what happened.
We're underneath the city and we live here now.
And
that's how the mole people were formed.
Also, we did a whole thing on Roanoke, and they mostly died and the rest of them integrated with the native peoples that they encountered.
Don't ruin the mystery.
Well, that is what happened, let's be honest about it. Sorry, Croatoan.
So the walls of the tunnels are sections of neatly cut sandstone done to remove blocks of sandstone for building materials, and handmade bricks assembled into arches, constructing cathedral-like ceilings. They're really beautiful, actually. The craftsmanship is really amazing, and if you're watching the video version of this right now on our YouTube channel, there will be images of what these tunnels look like. They're incredibly interesting.
Well, near me as well, in Kinver, which is actually where I went to school, it's a little village, there are these rock houses, and they're sandstone because the whole thing's sandstone. So it is feasible to dig into sandstone like that. It's not like digging into granite. It's not easy.
Yeah. And they were sandstone quarries to start off here. Yeah. So what kind of a person hires hundreds of men to build tunnels under all of his property and then refuses to tell anyone what those tunnels are for?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. That's the mystery.
An eccentric guy.
I like him.
There are many stories of Joseph Williamson being a big old weirdo. I do want to preface these, Matthew, by saying that there's no proof that any of these stories are true.
It's like the Emperor Norton stuff. There were certainly some things that he did, but a lot of the things that people said about Emperor Norton, it's like, we heard he said this, like, we know he didn't say that. So fact and fiction gets all meshed together.
Or it's like, he said that maybe he did. We don't know. There's very few, like, actual records of him. But the website, WilliamsonTunnels.com, has labeled each of the stories I'm about to tell you as likely to be possibly true.
Am I going to call those people liars?
Not us. We wouldn't.
I might, actually. I would, yes.
It's reported that Joseph did not dress like the very rich man that he was. Maybe because he came from a poor family and found success initially through being a blue-collar type working man.
Man, in quotes, he was a child.
Well, eventually he became a man. His style of dress was such a big part of his personality that a story about it was published in 1837 in the magazine The Rambler. And they think this one might be true because this is before his death. So a magazine he probably read published a story about him while he was alive. Now, that being said, lots of things get published in magazines while people are alive that we know aren't true. So who knows? But The story says that an acquaintance of Joseph got on his case about his scruffy-looking nerf herder state of dress. Direct quote.
I'm going to start calling people nerf herders. Big time. What does it mean? Who knows?
I knew when I wrote this joke that it would be better if you were a Star Wars fan, because it's a Star Wars quote. Leia calls Han a scruffy-looking nerf herder.
Oh, I thought that's what was written about him, that he was called a nerf herder.
That's how I was playing it off, but I was actually inserting.
Yes.
Because I wanted to call him scruffy, and I thought scruffy-looking nerf herder. Star Wars reference.
I thought nerf herder was like a 1800s reference that I didn't understand.
It's more of like a 1980s Star Wars reference.
Cool. I'm actually less knowledgeable about that, so...
Anyway, Joseph responded, "What does it matter? Everybody knows me here." Cut to the two men meeting again in London, with Joseph still dressed in the same scruffy way. This time Joseph says, "What does it matter? No one knows me here."
Honestly, great mindset to have. Take that on board. Let that be the takeaway from this show. Who cares what people think of you? I think it's important.
They either already know you or they don't. Yeah, and who cares?
Do rate this podcast 5 stars, but who cares what the people think?
We do care. Please, yes, go to your podcatcher of choice, rate and review with 5 stars, please.
But in all seriousness, what other people's opinion of you is their problem. It's not yours.
Another story says that his neighbor, who was also his tenant, because he
owned everything,
built all these houses on this bit of land, their houses had a shared wall. So his neighbor, whose house had a shared wall with his, wanted a room added on to her house to be a nursery for her expanding family. One day, Joseph suddenly busts through their adjoining wall into her bedroom, has 2 workers put a door into the hole, and then says, "There, you can have this room for your nursery," making a room from his house now part of her house.
Love that. That's a great idea. That solves that issue. It's like, I'm not using this room. Bust through, put a door in, seal my door up. There you go. You got yourself a room.
Now you have a room. Stop bugging me to make your house bigger. Done.
What a landlord.
Oh, remember that banqueting hall tunnel I mentioned earlier? One more story tells how that space got its nickname. Joseph invited his friends and upper crust acquaintances to his home for a dinner party.
And he ate them.
And he dragged the bodies into the tunnel where he feasted.
A statue of Moloch descended.
This took a dark turn. He sat his friends and upper crust acquaintances down at a ramshackle table and placed before them a meal of essentially beanie weenies. Food for the poors. Understandably, being offended by this very rich man serving them a meal of essentially Chef Boyardee. Many of the guests got up and left. To those who stayed, Joseph said, "Now I know who my real friends are," and took them down to the tunnels where a fabulous banquet was laid out for them.
I love this guy. This is great. Doing the old switcheroo. Firstly, I will also mention, when I was younger, and up until this very moment, I thought Chef Boyardee was fancy, but I'm assuming it's not.
It's just like cans of, like, preserved ravioli that you eat up. You open up the tin, you plop it into a bowl, you microwave it, and you give it to your kid.
Don't judge a man for eating 7 or 8 cans of ravioli. No, he's not proud of himself. There's a whole Trailer Park Boys thing about eating 7 or 8 cans of ravioli, and it's very funny. But that's not for now.
I have eaten my fair share of Chef Boyardee, by the way.
Oh no, Paula, we know that you're a voice of the people here. That's fine.
Let them eat Chef Boyardee. I love this story because it kind of sounds like a parable out of the Bible to me.
It does.
Like, I can just picture Jesus telling it to his disciples and then being like, "Yeah, I don't want to eat tins of sodium-laden pasta either." And then Jesus telling them about humility and loyalty and faith, and them learning a valuable lesson about how to get to heaven by mailing in all the UPC codes from their cans of SpaghettiOs.
Look, Peter, is he gonna just... I know he's Jesus, but loaves and fishes again? Really?
It's the only thing he can make. You just gotta go with it. He can't... I wish he could make a steak, okay?
He's the Son of God.
He can only do loaves and fishes.
No herbs, no spices. He doesn't... The loaves don't come cut. That would be a great idea.
Loaves don't come cut. Sliced bread? That's way too technologically advanced for us.
He's like, Jesus Christ, thank you so much, is what I was saying. Yes.
Also, I'm so glad you went with that joke because I was ready to be like, I'm sorry, that was a dumb joke, but I couldn't stop myself from writing it. But you just went with it, and I appreciate you as a podcast host and partner.
Yes, and Paula. Yes, and that's what I'm here to do.
The next section of my script is labeled Describe the Theories. No one knows why these tunnels exist. But that doesn't stop them from coming up with theories, Matthew. Oh, no. You got any theories?
Doomsday cult.
Some think that Joseph was part of an extremist religious group, a doomsday cult.
Easy. I nailed that. This isn't our first rodeo, Paula. I know about
gosh.
you. Of course, doomsday cult. That makes loads of sense.
He thought Armageddon was approaching, and he built the tunnels as a bunker, which does explain all the tins of beans. He wanted to keep this safe haven a secret, so only those also part of his cult could seek refuge in them. One of my research sources said that this could actually be probable, as Liverpool was a hotbed of religious extremism at this time. But I couldn't find any corroboration for that in any of my other research. I did all this digging into just like Liverpool city history and tried to figure out what the heck, but I couldn't find anything that talked about Liverpool being a hotbed of religious extremism in the 1800s, so I don't know. If you are listening or watching this and you know, I would love, send me an email or leave it in a comment. I would love to know. I could not find any more about this.
I mean, I had Beatles Mania.
Already in 1806.
Yeah, it was,
already.
But it was a cult for the dung beetle. That's what it was. It was an Egyptian cult.
Another theory is that these tunnels were used to store contraband that Joseph Williamson was smuggling. And that's why he never let anyone down to see the tunnels.
I like this one.
He needed to keep his illegal activity hidden. This is possibly supported by the fact that in 1858, when James Stonehouse wanted to publish sketches and other details about the tunnels.
The guy wanting to release sketches of these stone houses is got a last name, Stonehouse.
Well, they're stone.
What's this guy's name?
Tunnels. James Stonehouse.
And he wants to do a thing on stone buildings, like stone. I'm sorry, I feel like there's a link there.
So James Stonehouse wanted to publish sketches and other details about the tunnels, but he was threatened with legal action. Now, Joseph Williamson had died in 1840. And this is happening in 1858, but one of his former tenants, Cornelius Henderson, claimed that Stonehouse was trying to publish, quote, libel against Williamson's character and didn't want it made public.
Or maybe this Stonehouse guy thought it was contraband and smuggling going on, and he was like, you can't say that because that's not what was going on.
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
It could also be because Stonehouse didn't actually get permission to go into the tunnels. He was trespassing on property when he went into them to do this documenting. So maybe Cornelius Henderson was just mad about that. But if there's nothing to hide, Matthew, who cares? Let him publish whatever he wants if there's nothing to hide.
That's not how life works, but yeah, fair enough. If you've got nothing to hide, just let me go through your internet history. It's like, no, even, firstly, don't, but also,
No, but I have nothing to hide, but also get out my business.
If you've got nothing to hide, you don't mind us if we spy on you. That's not how it works. It's like, don't spy on me. How's that sound?
It could also be that Joseph was using the tunnel work to continue to quarry the stone in this area. And one theory is that he actually wasn't paying taxes on...
Oh, so illegally quarrying and using this as a front almost.
Yes. And so that's part of what needed to be hidden. Was not necessarily smuggled contraband. He was far enough away from the actual ports that it seems unlikely that contraband could be smuggled to these tunnels. But maybe he was trying to hide the fact that he was making money and not paying taxes on it.
Possibly, I suppose. But I feel like he already made enough money. But he was good at making money, I guess. So maybe.
And a lot of people who are good at making money want to make more money.
I don't believe any of these.
Well, how about this? This is the theory that seems to be the most widely accepted. And it's very similar, again, to something we discussed in our Sarah Winchester episode.
God made her do it.
And that's God made him do it. Shakespeare made him do it.
I heard that was the case. I thought that was going to be the case. I thought he was going to be Shakespeare that was going to make him do it. Yeah.
Right. Francis Bacon. No, it's charity. So the Napoleonic Wars ended in 1815, and a large number of men were returning home to Liverpool from the war, and they weren't able to find work. until they applied to Joseph Williamson. He hired many of these returning men, and a lot of people believe he did this to provide employment for them. Like he had these tunnels made as a way to provide employment for people who otherwise wouldn't have any.
I choose to believe this. I like this the best.
He didn't need to hire them. He didn't need to build these tunnels. Sometimes stories say he would have them like move a pile of rocks or bricks and then just like move them back.
It's not fulfilling work, though, I would argue, but it is work.
So he would give them these pointless tasks that made no sense, but it kept otherwise unemployable people employed, which is better than, I guess, just giving them handouts. At least they feel like they're doing something.
Yeah, I think it makes you feel better. It's not fulfilling work, but it probably feels better than taking charity. There's a certain pride, I think, amongst working class people like that, so I certainly know that.
There's also another anecdote of people being like, why are you doing these tunnels? What's the deal? And instead of actually telling them any reasons why, his response is, I employ more people than anyone else in this city, so hush your mouths.
I like that. I want that one to be true. I choose to believe that. That's how I do history. I choose to believe that, so that's what I think is true.
Quote that, put that on a shirt. That's how I do history. I choose to believe that. Okay, I have one more theory, and at first I thought it wasn't very fun. And it took the mysteriousness out of the story. And I did discover this theory as I was writing this episode, and I was like, great, I have to rewrite my whole episode for this theory. But the more I think about it, the more I think it's actually a really great and interesting theory. And it's that Joseph Williamson was doing innovative quarry restoration. So this theory says that he didn't dig any of the tunnels at all. They all previously existed because of the quarries that were already there. So they had been dug out already as part of the quarrying of sandstone that was going on. And then when he gained control of the land, he wanted to build housing on top of them. And the way to make the foundation stable enough to do so was to build these vaulted arches over the tops of the quarry tunnels. That's
not... firstly, I don't feel like digging anthill tunnels is the most sensible way to quarry something. But if you do mean to support the structures, that was a real problem, because in the UK, especially around, well, anywhere there was mining going on, and it's something that happens a lot in the Black Country where I live, there was whole streets would just sink because they were quarried underneath, they were mined underneath for coal so much that literally in Cradley Heath, there's a place, a whole street would just cave in almost, and it was a real issue that was happening. So it's not an unfounded problem to kind of like literally dig the ground so much underneath that there's nothing to support. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it might explain why there are areas with double or triple stacked tunnels. If these sections of dug out rock were so deep, he might need multiple layers of brick arches to create proper support for the land above.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think it's an interesting and creative idea. Liverpool was expanding, people were clamoring for development, and the quarries couldn't just be filled in because those materials were needed for building the housing and other structures for this growing city.
That's probably it.
Maybe Joseph Williamson was just a capitalist.
God bless him.
But we'll never know for sure.
We could do a seance. I think we should, and that is Patreon. Going to be Patreon.
That's Patreon bonus content.
I tell you what, I like this guy, the Mad Mole of Edgehill. I feel like I like him. Anyone who's a bit eccentric, I'm all about. Are you a bit eccentric? You must be, because you're watching this podcast. I'm going to direct this to the camera. Hello. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Paula, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you immensely.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was inspired by a Doctor Who episode. So anyone who wants to comment, have you seen the Doctor Who episode? Yes, that's what made me want to look into this.
If you're sick of seeing my face, you can always listen to this show as a podcast in its true form. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find the show. If you've got some strange history, someone in your life done something weird, got an artifact in your house you can't explain, your great-great-granddad killed a guy and that guy was important, let us know. Tell us about that. What's your family history? Air your dirty laundry on this show. I think that's what we could do for people. Honestly, I think that's a service we could provide. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to do anything to support us, you can comment down below and all those type of things. But the call to action I have for you is to tell someone about the show who you think might enjoy it. A little bit of history in their lives delivered in hopefully a fun way. Did you have fun? Did you?
I hope so.
So we've got socials. They're linked below. You know, Twitter and Instagram, all those. You know, we're there. And we'll see you next time, everyone. Thank you so much for watching.